All right, so my name's Cademan. I'm going to be talking about the golden ratio in art. I'm a photographer and I'm an artist, so I chose this because I'd vaguely heard of the golden ratio before, and some like older painters from like a while ago really swear by it and think it's like something really profound and something that helps like lay out art in a pleasing way. So yeah, let's just get into it. So, in really simple general terms, the golden ratio is a ratio between two numbers that equals 1.618. That's the number, that's the golden ratio. That's what you're looking for right there, is that number. It's usually represented by the Greek letter phi, which is this little circle guy right there. And a lot of artists say that it can create visually pleasing works because the spiral is proportional and it's like natural because it's just math. And then so our human brains are like really drawn to it. Some artists swear by it, some artists don't really. It's also used in like graphic design a lot. So there's that. Here's a beautiful picture from Q Math of the golden ratio represented on a line, which is really helpful. So if we're bisecting a line in a certain way to where the whole line, which is A plus B, the ratio between A plus B and A is equal to the ratio between A and B. So we have this nice little formula down here that makes that a little easier to digest. So we have A divided by B equals A plus B divided by A, and that equals 1.618 dot 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 because it is an irrational number, but 1.618 is like the simplified version of that. So that's a visual representation for it. It took me a little bit to like kind of realize what's going on, but it's just the whole line and the ratio between that and the larger part, and then the ratio between the larger part and the smaller part of the line are equal. And that is the golden ratio in this line. So there's that. But what's up with this spiral? Because like a lot of people, when they visualize the golden ratio, me included, I just think of this spiral. I don't think of like bisecting a line. I think of this guy. And so where is this coming from? This is the spiral is composed of golden rectangles, which include the line, but they're a little different. A golden rectangle's length and width equals the golden ratio. This is getting more into like geometry, but we have the numbers down here. This is the equation. It's 1 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2. If we were to like input the numbers, those are the numbers you would need to equal the golden ratio, but a rectangle with that equation applied to it with those numbers will equal the golden ratio. So if we want to compose that spiral, we have one rectangle, which in this case is A, B, C, and D. Then we have another rectangle, which is F, C, D, and E. And F, C, D, and E is also a golden rectangle. So we're putting one golden rectangle instead of another golden rectangle. And you can keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. And you can also see that the line, we can just take away the rectangle, but the line between B and C, we can visualize that as our line we saw before. We can see that F, which is what's marked on this specific example, but F is where the line previously was bisected. So we can see B and C, they bisected at F. And so the relationship between those two segments of the line are the same as the line we saw before. And then if you keep doing that and you keep adding lines, they just extended the line from F to E. But you can keep doing that and keep bisecting those lines. Then eventually you'll have something that looks like this, which is the golden spiral. It just doesn't have the arches, but you can see like the line at the very bottom, they bisect it and it goes all the way up. And then we have this rectangle, you bisect it in the same spot, and the same spot again, and then the same spot, and the same spot, and the same spot. You keep going forever until you get into that little point down at the bottom. But it's always bisected at the same spot because that's like the golden ratio spot that equals the number. So that's what we're doing, or that's what it is. And then you would obviously draw the arches from each corner of these squares, and then it would eventually spiral. But this is just the golden rectangles and what they make by themselves. So that's the gist of it. And if we're getting into art, I've got some examples. Here's Salvador Dali. This is the Sacrament of the Last Supper. This is a pretty infamous example of the golden ratio being used in art. Obviously, this piece is very inspired by it. It's got some geometric shapes and everything, but we have the original image over on the left, and then we have the image on the right. It has the golden ratio overlaid onto it. But we can see that It's two of them. This painting uses two, just like right next to each other. But we see that these two people in the foreground are right in the middle of that spiral. They're the focal point. And we see that the table ends perfectly with the first bisection that you would make on that rectangle. The table stops right at that line. And this person in the middle here, in the very middle, he's in between, he or she, I can't even really tell, is in between these two spirals. There's nothing between them and the other people. They're perfectly in the spirals. There's an equal number of people on each side. It's very, very proportional. And yeah, this is mainly for this one. You can also see like the cloaks on these people in the foreground kind of follow that curve on the spiral as well. But this is a pretty famous example. Obviously inspired. You can kind of tell. Some of these other pieces, you're like, I don't know. I mean, like they were definitely inspired by it, but it's less obvious. But we'll go to the next one. This is Leonardo da Vinci. He loved the golden ratio. He was all about it. He thought it was super cool. Um, but here's one piece by him, and we can see that he's using this left-hand side of the spiral to have this one angel lady over here on the left, and it kind of guides your eye over to the right, and we can see this other angel lady in the center of the spiral is like her face and her upper body. We can also see that this first bisection that you would make in the whole rectangle, the first one you would make, is totally separating this one angel lady on the right. She's completely contained in that. So it's kind of obviously it's using the proportions of this thing. That's the whole point. But she's totally cut off by that, and that her whole body is contained in that. And then in the middle, there's not a lot going on. He's kind of taking into account that the golden ratio is kind of tailored to one side. So he has one angel on the other side. He's got this other angel lady on this side. And there's nothing in the middle. It's kind of just guides your eye to her and then back around, and not much going on in the middle. It's a great painting. I think it's a pretty good example. I do like this painting quite a bit. But last one, I have three examples. This is also another fantastic painting by Rembrandt. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but it's a pretty famous painting, The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicholas Tulp. I had to put that on a separate line because of how long that title is. But this is kind of a different example because the golden ratio is obviously diagonal. It's not just like perfectly perfect. But and this example isn't necessarily using the center of the spiral as the focal point, as we've seen in these like past ones. Usually the focal points are the spiral, like the center of it. But this one isn't. But it's using this shape, the spiral, to kind of lead your eye through the painting. So we have the center, which is Dr. Nicholas and this poor, unfortunate fellow being dissected. But we have that, and then your eyes kind of go up towards these people who are looking at the body, and then back towards Dr. Nicholas. And it kind of goes in this spiral, like an oval almost, between these two things. We also see again that the main bisection in the large rectangle, this one, the very middle one, separates the people up on the top left of the painting to the body and the doctor on the right. So a lot of these artists are using that main bisection to separate subject matter, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, we have all these people at the top left separated by that line, and you're kind of looking at their faces. And then obviously that guy's face is pretty much in the center of the spiral. But it's mainly using that bisection to cut off, have these people, have the doctor over here, and your eye kind of follows what this spiral is doing, the actual spiral. And it's mainly using the spiral to kind of lead your eye through the painting, if that makes sense. But that's the gist of it. A lot of these older artists have kind of fallen out of popularity because, like, I don't know. This I don't know why, but a lot of older artists, there was a lot of mysticism behind the golden ratio, and they thought it was very, very profound, and they used it, and they thought it was a natural way to show proportions, and it was like this divine calling, and it made it divinely beautiful because it was using this math that was natural to the world. Obviously, it's math, but they're using it to get these perfect proportions, and that was the main draw of it, trying to get some proportionate paintings. But that's all I got. Is my works cited, and that's the golden ratio in art. I hope it was at least semi interesting. All right.